Here we are. Can you see my iPad?
Yeah.
Is it okay? Thank you. What I'm going to do, what I suggest, Bindu, if you just, email me.
Perfect. Yeah.
Excellent.
Because I have some other commitments today, so I won't be able to possibly stay for the whole class, you see, because I didn't find out till yesterday, and I thought, oh, it's 22nd of May, I've got enough time to get myself organized. But I'm just glad that I'm able to join a little bit today.
I'm glad you are too, Bindu. I think the ideal thing would be if we could have a chat.
Yeah.
Which I always like to do with people who newly joined anyway.
Yeah.
So,
Is that 80? Is that 57 or 87? What's the number, James?
67. Sorry, there's writing with these electronic pencils on an iPad screen.
That's 60.
Isn't my finest calligraphic work. So James P. Whelan 67@gmail.com. If you can drop me an email afterwards,
Yeah,
I'll arrange.
I will do. Thank you so much, James. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Okay. Is that the same Bindu as in a droplet? That Bindu?
Yeah, that's one of its meanings. Yeah. That's one of its meanings. Yeah.
Right. Okay, there we are. So I had a message. In fact, the message was from Charlene. So Charlene was almost acting like the voice of my conscience, because I have fallen a bit behind in the YouTube recordings, although we've completed chapter 1 of the Bhagavad Gita. So that was for the Sanskrit. Those of you, I'll have to mention this again at the Sanskrit. I'm not up to date with the Bhagavad Gita recordings, but I shall endeavour to get on with it and get ahead of the game again. Right, so we are now dealing with the last verse of the Karanyametta Sutta. Oops, sorry, I keep pressing the wrong button. Karanyametta Sutta. We were on reach verse 10. So we had started this. I can't remember how much of it we'd done. I ought to be able to remember. How much of it had we actually done? Is there anybody who's able to remind me with great precision where we'd reached?
I think we'd finished it, James, and you'd started asking people to read it.
Ah, okay.
I think two people had, I think.
Ah, good. Thank you. So I'll just read it through once, and then anyone who wants to have a go and who hasn't yet read it, well, of course, is very welcome to. So Dittincha Anupagamma Tilavadasanena Sampanno Kame Suvinayagedhang Nahijatu Gabhasayam Punaretiti. Simon, you're first on my screen. Had you read it last time?
No, I hadn't, no.
Okay. Before you start, Simon, I'm not really testing you, I'm testing me. Can you just give us a little bit of the story of this word anupagamma? Just to see whether I explained it well enough last time for you to remember it this time.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think we dealt with that last time, but it did cause me a few problems when I first saw it. I was hoping it would be something to do with anu, as in following, but it's not, is it? I thought it would be
Mm.
like following along with. In fact, it's upagachati, which is to approach, and the an is obviously a privative, saying so he does not approach, would not approach. Um, and it has the meaning of kind of taking up or going to or subscribing to those dikti or views.
It does. Yes, that is so far so good. In fact, so far very accurate indeed. And it's interesting that you should make the point that you had initially been thrown by this by anu at the beginning, thinking that it was the verbal prefix anu, and then you spot it. In fact, it's an, then new word upagamma, which is a point I hadn't spotted myself actually until you mentioned it just now. So, and can you just parse the upagamma then?
Well, gamma is it's from gachati, and agamma means to come, I guess. Although it's no, sorry, it's not a with a macron, is it?
No, it's not. Ah.
Agamma would be, I think, then maybe the absolutive.
It is. You can divide the word. I'll just divide it here with spaces. They wouldn't do it this in an upa gamma. I've just divided it there in a way that wouldn't be done in Sanskrit or Pali writing.
Okay, so we're talking about upa going up to approaching.
Yeah.
There is the going bit. So this is and not approaching, not going up to.
But here it has the idea of not taking your stand on something, clink or grasping it. This is where I stand. I'm not budging. Is the kind. That's my view, and I'm sticking to it. So which is the idea here. So, and then it's used in an adverbial form. This is the absolutive form, most commonly ending in twa. Like gatwa, having done, and so on. Gantwa, having gone. Although the primary meaning is having done something, it can also be used in an adverbial sense of not in a manner that does not cling to views. It's not having gone up to a view. Here it's in a manner that does not cling or take a stand on those views. What happens is, just on this absolutive, to remind those who don't know, it's quite a simple rule actually. Where you get, let me do it in Sanskrit first. So you get, sorry, pen's gone funny again. Ita root gum. And the rule in Sanskrit, let's remember the rule in Sanskrit, and then it makes it easier to understand what's happening in Pali, as with so much else. To make an absolutive, having done something, you add twa, same in Sanskrit and Pali, you add twa to the root. So gum twa, all that happens is the M changes to an N naturally before the T. So gantwa, having gone. And since root kri plus twa makes kritwa. Talk about Sanskrit here. And it's almost the same in Pali, but with one very important difference. Now, the rule is that this twa ending, this what we call the absolutive ending, meaning having done. That's the primary meaning. In Sanskrit, you can add the twa directly to a root without a prefix. But as soon as you add a prefix, a verbal prefix, as in what we've got here, upa. We've got gum, but with a verbal prefix upa to go up to. So we've got upagam. Now, the rule in Sanskrit is because of this prefix, you can't add the twa. You have to have a ya instead. So, in Sanskrit, it's got to be upagamya. Gantwa, but upagamya. In Pali, that rule does not apply with the same strictness, and so it's usually ignored. So in Pali, you have Gantwa exactly the same in Sanskrit and Pali, but Upa in Pali you can have Upagantwa, which would be incorrect in Sanskrit. Incorrect because it's got a verbal prefix, therefore you are not allowed to have a twa at the end. It has to be ya, upagamya. But Pali also can follow the Sanskrit rule, so the gamya just becomes gamma in Pali. So upagantwa or upagamma, both correct in Pali. In Sanskrit, it would have to be upagamya. That will explain the difference between these two, the variant forms in Pali. You know, upagantwa or upagamya, but in Sanskrit, only one of those would be correct.
James, is that why when we get that little phrase, agamma, meaning having come, but it means due to or on account of?
That is exactly the reason, Simon. Yeah. So, for example, in Sanskrit, when we were gantwa that we've just been looking at, but put the verbal prefix a in front of it, and it becomes in Sanskrit agamya. And by regular phonetic mutation, the m in Pali becomes a double M, so it's agamma. So that is exactly that.
And what did Simon say meant, agama?
So say it again, Simon. You did get it right.
It literally means having come, because it's so it's the kind of thing on the bit on the front, the prefix. But it has a kind of a more colloquial meaning as kind of due to, because of.
Oh yeah. Thank you.
That is correct. Hang on, I'm just calling up the find. Hang on. Yeah, in fact, I'm just calling up the PTS dictionary here. The agamma, though, original gerund of agachati. So literally having come, but then used as in a sense, rather like we'd call a preposition in English, owing to, relating to, by means of, and so on. They've very, very recently put out a fresh edition of the PTS dictionary. I'm not sure if they've changed the substance of it, but I've noticed now that head words, just within the last week or two, these head words are now written in italics and underlined, and when you put the cursor over it, it goes red. So I don't know why they've done that. This is just a very new feature of the online PTS dictionary. I hope that all of you are very familiar with the use of the PTS dictionary, because I mean it's just so useful. There is the much bigger Margaret Cohn dictionary, which suffers from this disadvantage that only 3 out of the 5 projected volumes have been published. And Margaret Cohn, bless her, is now a very elderly lady. So I don't know what's going to. We don't know what's going to happen yet with the 2 volumes. So if you want to look up a word in Pali up to 2/3 of the way through, 2 words beginning with the bh, then Margaret Cohn has done it. But anything from onwards, we'll have to wait, and I don't know how long. Now, you might think, well, Margaret Cohn's dictionary is much bigger and fatter than the Pali Text Society dictionary. Yes, it is. Does that make the Pali Text Society dictionary kind of less worthy, as it were? The answer is no, because for looking up the meanings of words, the Pali Text Society, I would say, is equally good, and in some cases slightly better, because it does more etymology than Margaret Cohn does. And those of you who got to know me know how much I love historical etymology. The main reason for the vastly greater bulk of the Margaret Cohn dictionary is the huge mass of quotations that she gives from the literature. That's what makes up the bulk there. But if you just want to see what you get a few little quotations here in the PTS dictionary, but the PTS is always even though Margaret Cohn is available up to the letter B. Nevertheless, for me also the PTS online is the one I go to first.
James, is the Margaret Cohn, those first 3 volumes, are they available online or just hard copy?
They were hard copy until fairly recently, and they are now online. What I'm going to do is let me just let me call it up here. Here we are. So let's look up Agama. No, you see, no match is found for Agama. Now, another advantage of the Pali Text Society dictionary is that you can look up a word without the diacritics, and it will ignore diacritics and take you to all forms of the word that have it. Okay, is this you see, so if you were, for example, to look up dicti with a subdotted T, the Pali Text Society would take you to dicti with the dots. It'll help you like that. You can just type it in off your ordinary keyboard. Whereas with the Margaret Cohn one, they don't have that facility there.
James,
whether they ever will, I don't know. So let me just...
James, sorry to interrupt, but when you put in gamma there, why didn't it say absolutive? It seemed to say future passive participle or something for gamma.
The future passive participle. Ah, yes, okay. Let me just deal with that. So I'll come right back to your point, Roger. I'm just now illustrating Margaret Cohn. I looked up dicti in Margaret Cohn without the dots under the T, and which had no results. So in this text box here, when my cursor is, I put it in with the diacritics, and up comes the word. And you see how, if you look at the meaning, give you the Sanskrit drishti, okay, do you believe blah blah blah, and then you see lines and lines and lines of citations of quotes. That's what makes up the bulk of the dictionary. So as for the actual meaning of the word, Margaret Cohn doesn't really give you more than the PTS dictionary does, but she does give all of these quotes from it. So we've got, goodness me, maybe 20 lines or something Then before meaning number two, right view in insight, and so on. And then with the compounds. By contrast now, hang on, by contrast, look up in the PTS dictionary, double colon space. I'm now writing in Dikti, but without the diacritics. And helpfully, even though I haven't typed in the diacritics, it has taken me correctly to Dikti. And you see that the meanings given here are actually just as helpful as Margaret Cohn, but as we've just seen, the reason the Margaret Cohn dictionary is a much fatter book is because of all of those quotations that are given from the literature. Now back to Roger's question, future. So what? You're right, but what was it? Something in particular you saw that led you to say future passive participle rather than absolutive? You're muted, Roger. There we are.
I thought gamma was the absolutive.
Sorry, gamma or agamma?
Gamma.
Ah, no.
Oh no, right. Yeah.
It would have to be both in Sanskrit and Pali. It would have to be gantwa.
Oh, of course.
If it's the absolutive joined to the simple root without a prefix.
So gamma, is that a future passive participle then? It had FPP.
Yeah, okay. Let me just, yes, you put your finger on, there's one little ambiguities there. Let me just call up iPad again. There we are. As we've just seen, the future passive participle is, oops. Pen's misbehaving. Sorry, let me. There we are. No, there we are. That's the absolutive. The future, so it's got two endings, twa and ya. In Sanskrit, they're clearly separated from each other. In Pali, with the root alone, it's twa, but with the prefix, it can be twa or ya, as we've just seen. The future passive participle is, okay, you might not like to hear this, but it's made of three different ways of doing it. Not all verbs allow all three different ways. Suffice it now just to recognize them. There's the ending pavya, and look at the Sanskrit first, pavya, or, sorry, pen is, or aniya, or yeah. Don't all say rude words simultaneously. So because here we have this ending ya, which can indicate either an absolutive or the ending for a future passive participle. In practice, you will always know which one is meant, because the ending ya of the absolutive is invariable. It doesn't vary for, I mean, it's a verbal form, it's an invariable verbal form. So having come, Sanskrit agamya, Pali agamma, is invariable. It doesn't vary for whether it's past, present, or future, whether it's used adverbially or whose, it's just the invariable ending ya. By contrast, these forms ending in tavya, ania, and ya, these are all future passive participle endings. They are adjectives and will decline fully as adjectives. So you'll always be able to tell what, apart from its function in the sentence, you'll always be able to tell what it is. So, for example, from the root, by this tavya is the one always becomes tabba in Pali. Tavya tabba, that's normal phonetic mutation. Let me give you a couple of examples. So from the root, so my pen is just a bit, oh, come on. Now the eraser keeps turning. I don't, eraser. Maybe it's time to get a new iPad. It's really starting to play up. All right. So let's take the root kri to do. Let's make it. I have a real problem with my pen. It just went. Something just is not working. Which is so. Okay, kri et toi. Sorry. Sorry, that's the absolutive. It's not kritavya, but kartavya. So the root to ar by guna. That's a separate rule. Don't bother with that now. So kartavya, to be done, something, and that's an adjective meaning requiring to be done. And beginning to get. And Pali, it's katabba. As you see, a regular phonetic mutation, kartavya katabba, has the same meaning. Also, you can have karaniya, future passive participle, exactly the same meaning as kartavya, also meaning requiring to be done, needing to be done, which is the very first word in the sutta that we're looking at, karaniyam atta kusalena. And the other one is, I've left a gap here for the reason that I will explain in a moment. You'll just add ya to the root to make a future passive participle. There is a rule that if the root ends in a short vowel, which for our purposes this machine has set out to annoy me. It's beginning to. Sorry, I put on the eraser and then it automatically switches to something else. Okay. If the root ends in a short vowel, ri, I, u, then the rule is that when to make the future passive participle, you add a T in between. So it becomes kritya. It's just a phonetically added T, but basically it's the root with ya on the end. Special sub-rule, if it ends in a short vowel, ri, I, u, then you add in a T. That's why, for example, shru. would be shrutya, shrutavya or shrutya. Who's going to be the first to tell me, in this list of short vowels, r, I, u, u, why have I not included the other most common short vowel, a? Simon.
I wasn't going to tell you that. I was going to ask, with the first one, katabba that you've put down, isn't that katabba with one T and a long R? That's how I've normally seen it.
I'm sorry, yes, you are right. I think, but katabba is certain. I've seen katabba. Katabba is actually you're right. It's the more normal form. I kind of mentally slipping into Sanskrit, the karta katta. But yes, so you can have katabba, also katabba. But you're right, the katabba is the more common form.
James, to answer your other question, root never ends in a short A.
I'm sorry, say again, Teresa?
Is it true that a root never ends in a short A?
Teresa has got the correct answer. No root in Sanskrit ends in a short a. Roots can end in a short r, short I, short u, but none of them ever end in a short a. So have nya and ga and pa, but you could never have nya or ga or pa. So this root, sorry, this word kritya, future passive participle, kritya, we have it actually in the Metta Sutta in our second line. So this kritya, before we go back to kritya, becomes in Pali by regular phonetic mutation, kitcha, meaning something to be done, requiring to be done. And it means, let me get to it. Here we get back to it. We're getting back to it's the appa kicho, appa alpa kritya. Alpa can mean for a singular small, but when it first was a plural, it means few. So, and a kritya, something to be done, therefore an English word chore, of few chores, of few tasks, having not overburdened with things to be done. So alpa kritya, that same word kritya we've been doing, becomes kitcha in Pali, appa kitcho. Now, here it's the kritya is here, well, kritya on its own can be a future passive participle adjective, or like many adjectives, it can function as a noun. So a krityam is a chore, a thing to be done. And here it's a bahuvrihi, a possessive particle, having few things to be done. In other words, not overburdened. A man of few tasks, of few chores, not overburdened with chores. So before we go on, I just wanted to double check that I wasn't shooting a line or being dishonest with you when I said that katabba was the more common form. I have actually looked up katabba, of which, to my relief, the Pali text dictionary cites 16 examples. So you're right that katabba is by far the more common, but katabba. So you've got the katabam and also the katabam. Akatabba rupa, so not to be done. You see akatabba again. You see there, Simon, with a double T. Okay, so hopefully that has this rather long-winded explanation about the future passive participles and having three forms.
I
And
mean,
another,
I don't want to kind of delay things too much, but my original point was about gamma,
gamma, yes.
and um, I thought that was a bit possible absolutive form.
Ah, no. The reason it can't be is because if you have the root on its own, which it would be with gamma, then the absolutive has to be a toi.
But I thought in Pali you could use either
Ah,
the qua or the ya ending.
no, sorry, maybe I didn't explain well.
Well, it's probably
It's
me, James. It's
okay.
it's not you, it's me.
Well, it's okay. It's actually quite simple. If you have the root without any prefix and you want to
Yes.
make the absolutive, the rule is you have to add in both languages, Pali and Sanskrit, you have to add qua.
Ah,
Now that's very simple. Root plus trois. That's your only option. If, however, you now put a prefix, agam, upagam, and so on, bhisamicha, then in Sanskrit you make the absolutive by adding ya, and there's no choice. It has to be not a trois but a ya. In Pali, you have the choice.
okay.
But that choice exists only where you have the root with a verbal prefix in front of it.
Is gamma the future passive participle?
It would be, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
That's clarified things. Sorry about
Okay, right.
Thank you.
And how can you have a passive participle of a word like to go, which is inherently intransitive? The rule is you can use it if you're making, for example, gantavyam in Sanskrit or gantabam in Pali, meaning it is to be gone. That's a polite way of saying please go. So in other words, it's kind of in imperative form. And in fact, you can't do it in Pali, but in Sanskrit you can actually you can have a passive imperative, gamyatam, literally let it be gone, which sounds illogical in English. But if you want to tell people politely, the meeting is over, you may go now, you wouldn't impolitely say, gachata, go away. You say, gamyatam, let it be gone. So in other words, like softening the order in a polite way. Well, you could kind of do it in English with the transitive verb, like do it that way, or let it be done that way is the softer way of putting it. In Sanskrit, you can also do it with an intransitive verb. So and also you can then use the future passive participle. In Sanskrit, gantavyam, it is to be gone, meaning let one go or just go. But whether you have does gamma in Pali? Let me just. Would you have gamma on its own? I'm not sure you'd actually find it in Pali. You might. Oh, yes, you would. Oh, I had it there a moment ago.
I only mentioned it because I thought that's what it said with the cone entry you looked up.
Ah, let me just go back to that in a moment. I've just so the word. Why this is slipping about? I'm having a technology day today. Sorry. Gamma. The word exists. You see on the screen. It word exists, but from an entirely separate source. From Gama, meaning a village, and in Sanskrit would be Gramya, like rural, rustic, belonging to the village, which in Pali becomes Gamma. Vedic or Sanskrit gramya. But let's go back to okay, yes. So it is there, you're right, it's the future passive participle of gachati, gamya. Odvide. So it just refers you back future passive participle from root gum, gachati, meaning it is to be gone. Let's try and see if we can find. Margaret Cohen is very, very thorough in her quotations. Gata, Gantaba. Ah, okay. Ah, I was giving you the different forms of the future passive participle. The Gantavya, Gantaba in Pali, Gamania, to be gone. Why hasn't she got Gamma? Come on. I would have expected to see Gantaba, Gamania, and Gamma all grouped together because it's because they're all future passive participles. So she refers us to it, but I can't find it where in the place I would have expected. Anyway, there we are. That was a slightly longer digression than I had intended, but hopefully it's cast some light. Are there any more queries arising out of that before we move on? So, oh, there's another important point. Did I deal last time, within the last 2 weeks, with this alternative meaning of ayusa? From verse 7. Mata yatanyam putam ayusa eka putam anurakhe. I did deal with it, the alternative for the length. Okay, fine, I did, right. Go back to where we were. Okay, so after that little digression, let us get back to the recitations. Were you first on for the? You didn't do it last time, did you, Simon? Okay, so back to you then.
Dittincha anupagamma silawa dasanena sampanno kamesu vineya gedham nahijatu gabhaseyam punaretiti.
Right. Excellent. By the way, just to remind, this jatu there is kind of an indeclinable expletive. It's just an infiller in verily or in indeed. Incidentally, identical in Sanskrit. And nothing to do with jati meaning birth or anything like that. It is completely just exists on its own. Etymology, it seems a little bit uncertain. Oh, that's an interesting point. I hadn't looked it up. The Jatu, I don't know why this Polytech Society does this. I transfer it to shared screen, and then it just either blanks or gives me a quarter screen. There we are. Vedic Jatu, possibly okay, Janatu, which was actually the imperative form. Let one know. So it could be an abbreviation for that. Rather like, the Latin scire licet, one should know, that is to say, namely. Okay, another digression. So, who's next in line for a recital? Shri Nimala, did you do it last time?
Can I?
Yeah, please
Yeah.
go ahead.
Dittincha anupagamma silawa dassano sampanno kamesu meyage kamesu vinyagetam nahi jatu gabbaseyam punarreti.
Right. Of course, you're used to reading that in the Sinhala script, aren't you?
But we were just reading, but when the monk is reading, we are not reading, we are just by memory we are reading.
By memory, of course,
Chanting.
yes, yeah.
Yeah, I haven't read. Yeah.
So, Dassanena Sampanno.
Dasanena sampanno
Sampanna oh.
kamesu vinyayagedam nacha
Oops.
nahi jatu gabbaseyam punarreti.
All right. I just want to check something. I just want to check whether it comes out correct in Sinhala there.
Tincha anupagamma silawa
It does, does it?
dasanena sampanno.
Okay. Oh, it does, apart from the subdotted M. This is just the lexilogos, the one that I use to do the so you can do it for any language. Okay, so the Punareti. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's a little fun digression into Sinhala. Right. Judy, did you do it for us last time?
I did, yes.
Yes, okay. Who's next? Roger, did you?
I don't think so.
No.
Okay, shall I have a go?
You do indeed.
Ditincha anupagama silawa dasanena sampano kamesu vinaya gedam nahi jatu gaba seham punar etiti.
Can you get that very distinct double B and as for it, gabba.
Gabba.
Gabba. Yeah, gabba. Yeah. There's the one that's the Sanskrit garbha, meaning literally a womb. So, and in Pali by regular phonetic mutation becomes gabha. Okay, thank you, Roger. Charlene, did you do it last time? No, okay. In you come.
Ditincha anupagama silava dasanena sampano kamesu vinaya kedam nahi jatu gabaseyam puna etieti.
Yeah, you're getting the vowels generally fairly right, but just a bit more emphatic about the doubled consonant gabbaseyam, destanena, sampanno. They're pronounced rather the same as in Italian. When you get a doubled consonant, it's pronounced very. If you just say again, destanena, sampanno.
Dasanena sampanno.
That's much better. That is right. Yeah. Judith, I think you're next. Well, certainly
Yes.
next in my gallery, and I don't think you went last time.
No, I didn't. Ditincha anupagama silava dasanaya sampano kalmesu vinaya gadam nahiyatu gabasayam puna eti ti.
You sounded that, you pronounced that jatu, almost it was written in, remember, jatu, not a yatu, jatu.
Jatu.
Jatu, right. Also, again, with these doubled consonants, can you just say clearly, dasanena sampanno?
Dasanena sampano.
Okay, right. Also, under the influence of the phonetics of English, it's actually not quite natural for a native English speaker to say kamesu, kamesu, it's long, short. The native English speaker would tend to slip into shortening the first one, like kamesu, but which is what you did there. But remember, even though it's contrary to our English phonetic feeling, make them both equally long, equally prominent. Kamesu, kamesu.
Kalmesu.
That's it. That's better. Good. Okay, Keith, round to you.
I think that's live. Ditincha anupagama silava dasanena sampanno almesu vinaya gatang nahijatu gapaseyam guna etiti.
Yeah, and of course I noticed you were very carefully and exactly applying your what you call the Morse code system. So in fact that came out from the point of view of light syllables and heavy syllables, that came out totally error-free. Every single one was dead right. So your system works, Keith, your Morse code system, the dots and the dashes. Good. Christine, round to you.
Okay, here we go. Itin cha anapagama silawa asanena sampano amesu vinaya getam nahiyat jatu abhasayam punaretiti.
Okay. But there's one point that remember this I mentioned earlier about the kamesu to Judith, kamesu.
Kamesu.
You kind of slightly slipped into that kamesu.
It's very, very tempting. Kamesu vinaya getam. I think of chanting it, and that may be, and this is not the claim that I'm a good chanter when I hit the end, but it pulls in a rhythm.
I have found that as well, that when people are chanting, it's much easier to get that rhythm right. And of course, if you're sitting with more experienced chanters,
oh yes,
if you slip out of it, you very soon know that you've slipped out. Because, for instance, if when chanting this, somebody were to say kamesu instead of kamesu, you would be out of step with everyone else.
Mm.
And I noticed that in the Sangha I belong to, in the precepts, many people were chanting in the fourth precept. In fact, begins with kamesu. Kamesu michachara. Michachara. And the ablative michachara. And I noticed that a lot of people who should have known better were shortening michachara. Machachara they were doing. And before I moved to Manchester, where I had far closer contact with these people, which I did a year and a half ago, I determined that I was actually going to fight a battle. Not an overt battle, a battle by example. And I am pleased to announce now, over the past few weeks, it seems that I won. Everyone's doing it properly. Micha-chara.
Sounds like a dance.
It does rather.
Thank you.
Right. So next one, we're round to Teresa.
Okay. Ditting cha anupagama silava dasanena sampanano.
Sorry, say that last word again.
Sampanano. Yeah.
Sampano.
Sampano.
Sampano. Remember very distinctly that double N. Sampano.
Sampano. Kame su vinaya getang nahi jatu gabha sayam punar etiti.
Again, avoid the temptation to make that long. It's a punar, sorry, avoid the temptation to make it short, it's long. Punar etiti. Punar etiti.
Etiti.
Remember the A and the O, in Sanskrit, they are invariably long, whatever follows. In Pali, they are also always long unless they're forced to be short. And the only times they're forced to be short is when it's followed by a doubled consonant or a consonant cluster. For instance, hetu, which is identical in Sanskrit and Pali, meaning a cause, hetu, followed by a single t. And the pronunciation will be identical in Sanskrit and Pali. But take a word like metta, which in Pali, would write M-E-T-T, long A. In Sanskrit, that would be pronounced metta. So the A would have its full vocalic length, even though it's followed by a double consonant. Whereas in Pali, it's pronounced short, metta. The reason we never bother with the diacritics, the long and the short diacritics of the A and the O, except occasionally in grammar books, if they're explaining it, is because the rule for the pronunciation of A and O is always the same. There's no such thing as there's an A or an A that's long by nature or short by nature. In Sanskrit, in Pali, the A and the O, as I say, there's an exact rule that always applies whether it's long or short. In other words, it's always long unless it's forced to be short by being followed by a double consonant or a consonant cluster.
So the double consonant, the shortening of the E by the double consonant only happens in Pali.
I'm sorry, say again, I didn't catch well.
There's the shortening of the consonant when there's a double meta. Is that just in Pali?
That applies to Pali only, yeah. Because in Sanskrit, whatever follows, an A is always a long A. So if the word metta exists, it doesn't exist in that form. But for example, if in speaking Sanskrit, you were putting the Pali word metta in speaking pure Pali, you say metta, shortened, because it has to be. In Sanskrit, it would be metta, a fully long A, followed by a double consonant. Again, it feels slightly unnatural to us as English speakers, but that's not the only thing in Sanskrit and Pali. It's unnatural to us. So you're right, Teresa. The rule applies Pali only. Teresa, were we around to you again for the?
I just read.
So you've just done it, my poor little brain. Of course, you've just done it. Jeremy, then, and then we can wind up with our recitations.
Ittincha anupagama silava dasanena sampanno kamesu vinaya gatam nahi jatu gappa sayam puna eti.
Okay, very good. Save that. I think you just misread that A as an I. It's Gedam. Gedam.
Getam.
Yeah, which is actually it means greed, and is I think I mentioned earlier directly cognate with our English word greed. Good. Teresa. Sorry to sound that like imperious voice. I'm so used to using that imperious voice with my little sister Teresa from years and years ago. Um, was it at this Pali class or at the Sanskrit class that I said that I'd give you a detailed rundown of praticca and praticca?
At the Sanskrit class.
Okay, right. So I'll do it at the Sanskrit class after this one. Unless I get an entire chorus of people all demanding to have a careful analytical breakdown of praticca, and as in praticca samuppada, and the word pachaya, and simply pachaya and praticca, just grammatical variants of the same word. Anyway, if there's a demand for it to be explained, let me know, and I will. But I'll be doing it at the Sanskrit class anyway, starting after in an hour's time. Penny.
Sorry. Could I ask a really stupid question?
Well, do you know, that really puts me on the spot, doesn't it? Because if I answer yes, if I say no, it'll say no, you can't ask. If I say yes, it would mean I would expect a stupid question to emerge. So that it puts me in a very difficult position.
But it probably is. Could you explain that last T at the end? I can't make out what it is.
Okay. That's not a stupid question at all. In fact, I had been intending to give you a refresher on it.
Oh,
So
okay.
So this T, the most common meaning of this final T, this is the one here, it means like unquote. If you are quoting what somebody had said, when we're writing English, you close the quotation marks, but when you're just speaking, there would be nothing in your voice apart from an inflection of the voice to indicate end quote. But in Sanskrit and Pali, in Sanskrit, in fact, it's iti, iti, and in Pali, it's just ti. Literally, it means thus. Meaning, thus was said, or thus was thought, ti. So when it means end quote, that's clear enough. You are finishing the quote. You don't do an open quote, you just do an end quote. Now, that's the general use of it. However, very, very commonly, you see that word also used as an end of sutta or end of poem marker. So here, the T is a marker, not an unquote marker, but an end of passage marker. The Karanyametta Sutta has 10 verses. The 80 is the last word of the entire Karanyametta Sutta. So the T is put there, not end quote, but end passage. Stop here. And you find it in some of the prose suttas as well, just to finish up with a T. So when it's used as an end of passage marker, it has no grammatical significance at all. It's just a conventional way, almost like saying amen, it's a conventional way of saying that's the end of this chant. And remember, I think you all know, but in the parsing box, I've written 80 with a short E at the end. 80, he goes. But remember that in running text, wherever you get a word ending in a short vowel followed by a T, that short vowel is lengthened. That's why it's the word 80 that I've highlighted there on its own correctly ends in a short vowel. 80, sure it goes. When it's followed by a T, the short vowel becomes long, etiti. Again, it doesn't have any grammatical significance. It's the same word. It's just by phonetic rule, a final T has the effect of lengthening the previous short vowel.
Thank you.
Right. Had you done a recitation, Finny?
No, I haven't. So,
Ah, okay. I think it was because your video had been coming on and off. So anyway, let's wind up the Karaniya Metta Sutta with Finny's recitation of it.
Dittincha anupagama silawa dasanena sampanno kamesu vinaya getam nahijatu gabhaseyam una etiti.
Okay, very good. Except that you've got all the double consonants right, except for that one was missing. Upagamma and upagamma. Also, can you say silava? Da silava.
Anupagamma silawa.
Silava, correct.
Yeah.
I can't remember whether I explained it before. This word sila, by the way, I may have explained this before. So sila, Sanskrit shila.
Yeah.
In its most primitive meaning, it meant any kind of characteristic. It's in Buddhist usage, it's come to mean virtue. You have, the panchasilani, literally the five virtues. So it's, virtuous moral conduct. But the original meaning was just your characteristic conduct, whether good or bad. So if you could take a word like, call up iPad again. So sila in Sanskrit, shila. It's very frequently found, in fact, more so in Sanskrit than Pali, as the final member of a compound. If you are something shila, means you are characterized by such and such a mode of behavior. So you can actually proceed by a word like papa, meaning evil or sinfulness. You can be papa shila, in Sanskrit papa sila. Which looks like an oxymoron, evil and virtue, but in fact, papa shila means characterized by doing evil, habitually acting wrongly, habitually doing evil. Not just a one-off, but you are characterized by this habit. However, when used on its own, it does tend to have the meaning of virtues. So that's why silava, as we just said here, is virtuous. Finny, what would be the accusative singular of silava?
Me.
Have I put you on the spot there?
Silawan.
Silavantam.
Oh, silawantam. Oh, right.
Yeah. It's the
the other. Yeah. Okay. Silawat, isn't it? I'm thinking Sanskrit. Yeah. Silawantam.
Yeah, this is my favorite grammar table that I'm calling it. That's the consonant antmant and vant with the comparison with Pali, and you commonly find it for the present participle. So here is the declension of the present participial forms, red for Sanskrit and green for Pali. This is up on the hard drive, Google Drive thing. And so the an Pali, it's the ant or ending is the same as the ant and vant endings. The declension is the same, with the exception of the nominative singular. You look at the nominative singular here, charam, charang in Pali. whereas the nominative singular, if it's month and vant, it becomes a ma and a va or man and ma in Sanskrit, van and va. So in Sanskrit, in Pali we have Bhagava, and in Sanskrit Bhagavan, which in modern Hindi you hear people talk about Bhagwan, in Bhagavan in Sanskrit. And in the chant you have Buddhang Bhagavantam Abhivademi. And the instrumental Swakatu Bhagavata Dhammo, well proclaimed Bhagavata is Charata Bhagavata, by the Blessed One, is the Dhamma. Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo. Right. Has everyone done
we say Swakato Bhagavato.
No. Now be very careful, Shinimara. So I know you might have chanted this a million times in the Viharas. Look,
Swakato Bhagavato Savaka
no.
Sangho. It's Bhagavata. Okay.
No, listen well. Yoniso Manasi Kurota. Supatipanno
Bhagavato.
Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. That's the genitive. Bhagavato, of the Blessed One. Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. Genitive. But Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, that means that by the Blessed One. The Bhagavato of the Blessed One, Bhagavata by the Blessed One. So
Then Itipiso Bhagavato.
Sorry?
Itipiso Bhagavato Savaka Sangho.
That's right. Itipiso Bhagavato Savaka Sangho.
Yeah.
No. Itipiso Bhagava Arhang Samma Sambuddho. Then later, Supatipanno Bhagavato Savaka Sangho. Okay, Bhagavato is correct there. Let me call this up again, because it's the genitive.
It's okay.
Genitive, charata. So charata, charato, Bhagavato. So the Bhagavato Savaka Sangho is the community of disciples, literally hearers, Bhagavato, of the Blessed One. Sixth case genitive, Bhagavato. But this Swakato is the third case, Bhagavata Dhammo, by the Blessed One. Swakato, well proclaimed, Bhagavata, by the Blessed One, Dhammo.
That means all this time I was chanting wrong.
Say again, Shinramala?
All this time I was chanting wrongly. Bhagavato. Yeah.
So Bhagavato Savaka Sangho Bhagavata Dhammo. I mean, if you say just Bhagavato Dhammo, that would mean the Dhamma of the Blessed One.
Oh, okay.
So honestly, you could say Bhagavato Dhammo. You could even say, actually, and that's an interesting point you've raised there. If you say Swakato Bhagavato Dhammo, that is correct Pali, but with a slightly different meaning. That would mean well proclaimed, Swakato is the Dhamma of the Blessed One, Bhagavato Dhammo. However, the actual chant goes, Swakato Bhagavata Dhammo, well proclaimed by the Blessed One. And now you mention that, Sri Nimala, I'm just wondering now you've said that, because sometimes you get variations in different traditions, which they're both correct Pali, but they're just chanting slightly different things. So if you have heard the chant, Swakato Bhagavato Dhammo, I cannot now say that that's wrong. It's not the one I'm used to, because both are grammatically correct forms with slightly different meanings. So maybe you haven't been chanting it wrongly. Yes. Maybe you haven't. Maybe it's just in the tradition or in particular monasteries that you've been in.
From the small age, we learn like that way. From the small age, we just chanting like that, you know.
Yeah. So it's not, I started off thinking, no, you're wrong, but now I think, hang on, it's grammatically correct, but with a different meaning, slightly different meaning. And that's a very interesting, I'm glad you raised that point. You see, so many of these little things, for years and years without noticing them, and then, aha, oh yes. Okay, there we are. We'll wind up there. We've just gone one. And so as usual, I'll see some of you for the Sanskrit and the rest of you in a week's time.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
So, thank you all very much indeed. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thanks.
Thank
Bye
you.
then.
Thank you.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.